Hello, everyone. I just wanted to take a moment and introduce myself. My name is Lauren Perrigan, and I am going to be talking all about book talks and how you can use them in the Library Media Center to engage your students and to increase their want to read and their love for reading. I hope that you find this presentation informative, and I would be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have at the end of this presentation. I plan on using some past experiences in my own classroom and also pulling in research that I have found from throughout the many different resources that I've been privileged to look through and use in my classroom and hopefully someday in my library media center. Book talks are activities that I like to use in my classroom, and I've used them in my classroom in the past, and I hope to bring them into a future library media center. I think that book talks are a great way to help engage our readers, and I want to dive a little bit more into that right now. What is a book talk? A book talk is a short presentation with the goal of enticing a reader to read a certain book. But what a book talk is not, it is not an oral presentation or a book report like you may have seen in the past or students may have done in the past. Some benefits of a book talk is it increases student engagement. Students are going to be talking about books that they enjoy and that they love, and that in return will move off to other students. It also increases note-taking, presentation, and listening skills, aligns with our state standards, and it's a perfect way to collaborate with other content areas across. Some tips for successful book talks are to limit the student's collection to pick from, suggest book titles for them based on their interest. Also, you could pick a theme like science fiction, you could have historical fiction, women in history. This is where you could collaborate with other content areas. You can also give them an outline to help them plan their talk and model, model, model. The more you book talk in the classroom as a library media specialist, the more the students will be able to successfully book talk in your library media center. Now I would like to show you just very briefly what
Do you
a
like
book
reading?
talk looks
Well,
like.
so does Matilda. In Roald Dahl's book about Matilda, a young girl who loves reading, who seems to be born into the wrong family. Matilda has a very hard time growing up, and she has to take care of herself and make sure that she gets herself to the library to get all the books that she wants. One day, she begs her parents if she can start going to school. When they finally agree, she finds out that her school is just as nasty as her family. Except for one person, Miss Honey, her teacher, understands Matilda the way nobody has her whole life. Read Roald Dahl's Matilda to find out more about Matilda's adventures and the magic and the reading that ensues.
As you can see, this educator was able to just briefly give a little bit of a preview about what the story is about, enough to intrigue her readers. She didn't give away the ending. She didn't tell every single element of the story, but I knew by watching her that she comprehended the story, that she knew what the story was about, and she seemed as if she were an expert of that story. By giving our students time to do book talks, they become the experts of their stories. And other students can learn from that, they can benefit from that, and it's a win-win. Next, I want to talk about the objectives for a book talk. First, through book talks, our students will be able to identify important elements in their chosen story, whether that be theme or the setting or the plot, whatever it may be, they can identify it and we can assess that as an educator. Also, the students will be able to work on their skills of persuading other readers through using techniques and presenting their pieces in literature, which we all know works straight with our state standards for speaking and listening skills. It's essential that our students meet these skills in order to meet the objectives for the book talk. They must be able to comprehend the text. Do they understand what they are reading? How are they responding to their text? What parts are they loving? What parts do they not like? They need to identify the main story elements. Can the student pick out the important elements, such as theme, main characters, or conflict? And are they able to orally present? Can they present information to their classmates in an educational manner? Also, can they persuade other students to read? These are all essential skills of today's learners, and it brings our Library Media Center to the forefront of their education. So what materials do you need to make a book talk happen? You need grade level books for the students to use. You need an outline for them to follow, and simple poster board and markers to help add to their presentation. You could choose to do these on the Chromebooks or the active boards or whatever laptops your school may have. You can choose to do presentations like a Prezi or a PowerPoint presentation. So how do we go about making book talks? Book talks can be a fantastic way to engage students. First, the students must select their books. You can be as wide open or as limited as you like. In my past experience, I've found that giving students some direction is very helpful. If you give students any book in the library, they're going to have a really hard time focusing their selves on what they want to do. But if you give them more of a limited collection to pick from, then you have a better chance that they're going to find a book and roll with it. So the first phase of the book talk is to model book talks. And that can be happening all along. You could do this all year long before you even introduce them. You can also watch published book talks online. And make sure you give students an outline to plan their book talks as they read. The students should be reading their book with their book talk in mind. They should be reading their book thinking about, what are the best parts? What do I want to share with others? What will convince others to read? Phase 2 of the book talk project is to make sure you give your students parameters to help them be successful. In other words, don't just say, all right, go talk about the book. Make sure you let them know, don't spoil the ending. You want to give them a little bit, but not a lot. You want to hook them and make them want more. And give the students plenty of time to practice their book talks. We can't expect them to have a successful book talk on the first time. We must give them the adequate amount of time to practice. Also, make sure other students are hosting a non-intimidating atmosphere for book talks. Make sure they understand that you give the reader the most attention that they deserve. Also, just sit back and watch the magic happen. When students are enjoying what they're reading and they're sharing that joy with others, it is contagious. So what happens if you have a group of students that have a higher level ability? Well, we extend. How can you extend book talks for higher level students or for students who have previously mastered the objectives? One activity for extension that I want to bring to your attention is my favorite, book battles. Students are paired through similar books. They are battling to convince their classmates to choose their book. And the remainder of class could even vote to give some feedback to the book talkers. Extension activity number 2 is, well, book talks are supposed to be about books we enjoy, right? Well, what happens when you challenge them to book talk over a book they do not enjoy? Then the students will have to dig deeper into the elements of the story to try to convince their classmates to read the book. Hey, they may even end up convincing themselves while they're at it. This adds an extra element of higher order thinking. Okay, so where do you go from here? What do you need to do before you can implement this in your Library Media Center? Here is my suggestion. Here's the follow-up activity I would like for you to complete. Create your own book talk to entice your students. Have you recently read a book that is brand new that you really want your students to get into? See if you can convince them in 2 to 3 minutes to read a book that you love. Use this book talk to model your expectations in the Library Media Center for when it's time for the students to create their own. I also challenge you to record your book talk. You can record book talks and add on them each year until you have a plethora of resources to share with your students. Imagine if you did a book talk per month. How many book talks would you be able to share with your students at the end of the year? And the best part is they'll carry over to the next year. I found many resources out there for book talks, and I encourage you to do so as well. I could have spent hours and hours and hours reading the different ideas on how to spice up book talks from different library media specialists and teachers out there. So before I leave you today, I wanted to share with you a few book talks that I have done for my classroom. I love reading young adult literature, and I love enticing my students to pick up a new book. So I hope you enjoy my book talks, and I hope to hear from you soon. Bye. No toys in the fish tank. Catherine has spent years trying to teach her younger brother all the rules of life. You see, Jason isn't like any other normal brother. Jason falls on the autism spectrum disorder. And for Catherine, this means her life is extremely difficult. Now, it's hard enough being in middle school. But imagine being in middle school with a little brother who cannot function in public. What does one do with a brother who embarrasses you all of the time? All Catherine wants to do is be normal. But is there a normal? What is normal? And what if normal causes other people pain? Catherine has to learn lots of life lessons and rules. And hopefully, she'll learn a few rules of her own. Harry's life really stinks. First of all, the only people that loved him in this world are gone. He's forced to live with horrid people who they don't care about him. They just stuff him away underneath the stairs. But one day he finds out that he's something special. He's not just a boy who lives under the stairs. He is powerful. And he has just only scratched the surface of that power. Harry finds out that he has a whole nother world waiting for him. A world full of adventure, magic, suspense, and peril. How will Harry turn out? And will he finally get to live the life he's always meant to be?